All right, greetings. So this is part four of the my Dawn's Hope after action report. I wanted to get this one out and about before Saturday. I like to keep up with these if possible, um, just because my record keeping's not great, my memory's not that amazing, and at some point I'll start losing the thread on these. So I would like to keep up with these. I mean, I get it's not super popular. Very few people want to hear about someone else's D&D game effectively, but here we are. Um, so we last left the party. The party had just fought the 14 the goblins, the war party patrol of the Exile. The Exile has his goblins have a war banner, which is like a cracked chemical flask. Um, and these goblins were hostile, unlike the other ones they had met. They do need a little bit of rest, so they do sort of decide, hey, we're gonna bed down for the night here and try try to get some healing, some rest in. And so they rest. They use the bird, the messenger bird, to go collect Sogtor. Sogtor to some degree is following the group anyway, because he wanted to keep it at tabs on them, not knowing if they truly were friend or foe. And so he was sort of there and sort of, ready to receive the message anyway. So they do catch up to them in the night. Of course, the mage is keeping watch. He fails his search roll again, falls asleep again. He wakes up. He wakes up to Sogtor and six of his goblins surrounding him, telling him, "Hey, you're not real good at this guard thing. You're not good at this, right?" Um, but the party is glad to see. Ostensibly, they're glad to see their allies at least. So they tell well, we fought the goblins. He's like, yeah, these are the alchemist cronies. He has a few of them. So this isn't the last you've seen of these guys. But they agree to head up together to see what's what, um, and to sort of figure out how to deal with this with the exile. So they do have the next morning, and they do see this what you're seeing over here on the screen. This is and Sogtor's goblins effectively, because these mountain goblins are like goats effectively, right? They can move on these mountains and these cliffs and these narrow rocks very easily. Humans cannot, and so they're sort of scouting and taking the lead, and they pull the party. They pull everybody up, and we're like, hey, hold up. What we see is a bunch of ledges and platforms and paths leading up into the mountains as we get closer to the headwaters. And this looks like where he's at because he has a lot of huts. There's like 80 goblins here or something. So the party's not too excited about that. And so what they see is they do see what do we got here? They do see huts here, right? This is living space, like this is a little village. And on most of these, there's some kind of living area. There's like a watchtower here. There's guards here. Mushrooms, giant mushrooms here. I mean, these mushrooms are going to look like huts, but hey, we can't be picky. But here, there's a big old building with a big old smokestack producing smoke and dumping sludge into the river. Like, this is the source of all the badness that's right there. Now, as you go farther north, everything gets higher. So it's like, 10 stories up to here, where it's only a couple of stories to here, a couple of stories to here, and so on. Maybe 6 stories up on this bridge. There's a bridge here. So the group then confers with Sogtor and decides what to do. There's 20 goblins, about 10 of them, about versus 80 is not good odds in any case. Um, it is likely, if they did fight, that they would win early because like none of these platforms have 80 dudes on it. These platforms have a dozen guys. So they swoop in, take over one of the platforms, and that's great. But it's only a matter of time before you get overwhelmed. Remember, the goblins have an easier time moving around the mountains. The humans will be confined to the platforms. The goblins will probably be trying to flank them, coming from the back, pelt them from cliffs they can't reach, etc. So they start thinking that a frontal assault is not a great idea. They think about sneaking past, just plain old trying to find path. And they're willing to spend a few hours in the day letting Patrick. Because again, remember, you have to find paths the humans can follow. Now, the goblins can help, um, but they can't carry the men like in the on the cliffs. But Patrick and the other navigator, the ranger, are unable to actually find a good way. It looks like this is the only way for the humans to go without taking days to go around. And if you take days, well, remember that poison is slowly moving down toward the town. They probably only have days. So they sort of decide they don't get a lot of play there. They think about, can we just sneak past? And maybe Sogdor can create a distraction. And so they think, okay, maybe, right? And that's fine. And Alice says, well, I should be able to cleanse the river. The spell will cleanse the river. And it should stop it. The mother's blessing should stop the river from being polluted also in the future. But she does admit that she's never quite seen this kind of poisoning before. This continuous dumping of this huge amount of sludge into the river. So she seems uncertain to them. Again, she's a kid. Now, in game terms, I do tell them because at some point I'm like, well, I it takes some of the magic out sometimes, but I hate being vague sometimes with the players. I hate going, well, I'm not sure, right? And them having to make a decision on unintentionally incomplete information. So what I said to them is, in game terms, what Alice just said. So I said, I said what Alice said. Oh, right. I've just never seen this before, and I don't know how, powerful I am in invoking the mother's magic, etc. And I said, so what that comes down to in game terms is the spell is, and Karen might know some of this, even though this is sort of a secret society of young sisters. But she knows the rune. She knows her part of the rune, so she knows some of the magic powers that Alice has. I said what it is, it's a modified spell called Blood to Water, which takes the caster's blood and turns it into purified holy water effectively. And for this, whereas normally it's a point of damage, this would be progressively more damage each time. It would damage her maybe for a die, then 2 dice, then 3 dice, and so on. And the longer she can hold on, the more powerful the ongoing permanent protection is. So if she only gets 1 or 2 or 3 levels, that might be dicey, and it might not be enough to cure this alchemical poison. If she can get 4 or 5 or 6 levels, then that's a better chance. So given that information, and again, I think they're a little nervous of effectively potentially sacrificing this poor girl. And this is her duty. She's actually, she's been trained to do this. And she I think knows. I mean, she knows what the ritual entails. So they, but I think the party's uncomfortable with that. What they decide is that they're going to have to strike down that lab somehow. They're going to have to see if they can't stop that lab from reducing the toxins, and effectively what they're like. So what about that? And I said, if that's the case, if the lab is busted, if it's gone, if it's not pumping more poison in, then you can almost assuredly say that she will succeed, right? It's not a chance. I'm not going to go, well, she has to be able to take at least five, hit fifth tier 5d6 of damage. And if this girl has 28 hit points, then you can imagine that's a lot of dice that she's trying to take. A progressive amount of dice. I think she has more. She has a high willpower, so she has more actual hit points than 28. But even so, if you're taking 1 die, then 2 dice, and 3 dice, right there, that's 6 dice of damage. You've taken 21 points of damage already on average. And if the next one is 4 dice, that's another 14 points. That's 35 points of damage. So I think she is on average going to be able to do 4. And I'm sure the party has a little bit of, leeway. I know Karen has spells that can give her temporary hit points, and so maybe she has a tiny bit of leeway there where that'll kick a die or 2 back her way. But it's unlikely she would get 6 all the way to 6 tiers. That's a lot of dice she's taking cumulatively. 21 dice of damage is not. Yeah, that's great. That's 60 hit points plus. So it's super unlikely she'd get 6. So they decide to go with the certain thing. Hit the lab. Lab is destroyed. Then this water purification cleansing ritual doesn't need to get 4, 5, or 6 dice. It can get 2, 3. It can do anything. Any amount of it will then purify the river. Which was, of course, originally this ritual was meant to purify like natural causes of disease and so on. This is not unprecedented amounts of sludge. So they decide to hit up the lab, and in doing so, they figure, well, we're not going to be able to frontal assault this place. Let's try something slightly clever. So here's what they come up with. Sogtor and his men are going to attack this area. Kill these guards. Attack here, right? These couple platforms at night. Goblins can't see in the dark. We got all the torches we can get. And their goal is to... and they're going to tie some torches onto like some banners, maybe 2 or 3, carrying 2 or 3 per goblin or that kind of thing, right? To make it look like there's more of them than there are. And they're going to try to burn some stuff on these platforms too and cause quite the ruckus. That's the idea. The goal being that if these goblins are feeling pressed, and with the element of surprise, I mean, you still have 20 guys attacking in the dark at night with the element of surprise at night. Maybe you're sleeping. They do have a good chance of scoring some pretty big damage over here and wreaking some havoc. Hopefully they will alert the rest of the goblins, and what the group is hoping for is that these goblins, and these goblins get pulled across this bridge. So there's a general movement to respond to the attack, that they think it's a massive attack, and that these guys are going to run across that bridge. And if that's the case, the party will make their way slowly in the dark, wade into the river. I mean, the river's not that high, right? It's slow and low now because you're getting up to the waters, the headwaters. And they'll make the climb here. This is a 20-foot climb with the climb skill required. Their party will drop ropes. The 3 climbers. They have 3 climbers in their group. So you have 3 people that can make the ascent. They make the ascent, they drop ropes, 3 ropes. The rest of the party gets up there on ropes. Done. They move in behind the goblins, never engaging. and they reach the lab and they deal with only what's in the lab. Hopefully, the Exile is there. They kill him, shut down his operation, move on to the headwater, purify it. Game over. Sogtor just has to keep everyone busy and thinking that there's a larger attack going on than there is, and not get his guys killed or captured. So they wait till the night. That's the plan. Sogtor has a bunch of his men have several torches tied to banners or spears. It does look like there's 40 goblins or maybe 50 goblins, right? And so they start the attack. We roll effectively like Sogtir's leadership, his tactics, versus a general DL of the originally surprised goblins over here, and he does very well. So it's enough of a success that the party does indeed see goblins guards from here and here start to move, and so goblins are moving generally north to hit this bridge, and so the party sees that as their cue. They go to the ascent point here, down. The 3 climbers go up. It's not a high climb. It's like a 20-foot. I tell them, hey, if you fail, it's like a 2-die damage drop. I think one of them scrapes themselves up a little bit, but not terrible. And they do make it up, but they are faced with 2 guards that stayed at their post. So you have 3 party members who make the climb. All of a sudden, they're confronted by 2 guards as they're trying to tie off ropes. So 2 of the party members have to defend themselves. Only 1 party member could tie off rope. And so as they're battling around this guy who's then frantically tying the rope off, then other party members come up. Now, it's a little exciting for a tiny bit, right? Because there's that moment of, oh, shit, and they're being attacked. But once that 4th or 5th party member gets up, or once the rope's tied off, the battle swings in the party's favor. So it's not this huge fight. It's literally 2 guys. And it's just sort of that little suspensey moment as they're tying the rope, and all of a sudden, right, and they're attacked and jumped, and they have to decide what to do. They drop the rope. Do they turn and fight? Do they, right, that kind of thing. The 3rd guy ties the rope off. He lets the other 2 fight solo each, which could be disastrous. One shitty hit, and then all of a sudden, now you're screwed. But that didn't happen. So the party members that fight, they fight off the goblin well. I think it was the priestess that ties her rope off. The other members of the party climb up. Done. The goblins are overwhelmed. The party moves on. With no resistance, right? They go right through here, and they see this massive, almost reactor-like building with a smokestack on the edge of the cliff, and that's what's dumping into the river, the waste product of whatever reaction's going on inside this hot, smoky stack. And there's a set of control rooms, a building which looks like it's sort of against that reactor. So picture like a reactor-y building, and then a square around the southern part of that circular reactor, smokestack, whatever you want to call it. And this thing's just churning out smoke, and it's churning out toxic goo, which slides down the hillside into the river below. So the party heads in there. And there's effectively 2 sort of encounters, 2 fights. And it's obviously it's alchemical stuff going on. But the first room has cages of various animals. Wolves, goats, there's a gaunt in a cage. And there seem to be a small set of like 4-ish goblins. And the goblins are, when the party enters, the goblins are, I'd say, ready for them, but they obviously have heard something's going on, that there's an attack. And they feed the Gaunt some of this weird serum, and then retreat. The Gaunt busts out of the cage and becomes, mega Gaunt. Now the funny part is, so Gaunts are effectively slightly bigger than human size typically, just a little bit. They're muscled. They look like gargoyles. Instead of, they don't have arms, but they do have vestiges on their wings, right? So they have bat wings. They have little clawy things on the bat, like the bat wings. They have snouty, sharp bird beaks, and taloned feet. And their typical attack is either to grab you and carry you up and drop you, which they can do. They're strong enough to carry something that's human size. Or they will land, wrap you with their wings, which are super powerful. Like, it's hard to escape once you get, and then peck your head to death, like smash your head like an egg. The party hates these things. Anybody who's played before is like, I hate these things. So one big one does sort of terrify them. Now, ultimately, it's not that big a fight because the party, like, Patrick hits it. I think, Lord Vincent hits it, and I think Karen gets a kill shot on it. She just foop and right in the face with an 11 or 12 and just KOs it. So it wasn't that big a deal. But it delays a little bit. The goblins escape the room. The door shuts, right? And so they do pursue. And I don't know. I think there's maybe one intervening room, but it doesn't matter. What they come to is a room. There's a mechanical noise going on in there. They can hear some excited shouting of goblins. So John, the mage, casts a spell. So one of his spells with Portal is called Keyhole, which allows him to see through a door for all intents and purposes. So he casts the spell. He sees through the door. And what they see is they got a pack of goblins, like 4 goblins. So there's goblins on. I actually have a little mini. So there are goblins on scaffolding. So this is so picture some scaffolding here. I suppose I could get a some crappy just sets or something, right? Let's see if we got some goblins here. Yeah. So I'll just, so they've got goblin. Oop, well, that didn't work. So they've got goblins on the scaffolding, 4 skirmishers. There are goblins down here in a little group. And these goblins, and I'm not going to draw the whole combat. This isn't even to scale. There's 4 of these goblins, and these 4 goblins are essentially holding a really big a cauldron of something, and they are waiting close to the door to nuke the party with whatever this cauldron has. He can't quite see over here, so he doesn't know exactly what's going on over here, but he does know that we've got this going on. So he relays that to the group. The group then, so one of the groups like, well, is there space under this door? And I said, yeah, there's about an inch or 2 right underneath the door. It's not that, yeah, it's like this. It's like an inch, closer to an inch. So what they did was they collected as much oil as they possibly could. So they had a lot of lantern oil vials, etc., into a bucket, right? And they slosh that under the door and then ignite it. And they have to roll. This is like a lucky kind of, right? This is mostly luck, right? They know where they're trying to aim for, but sloshing a bucket of liquid under a door, like how much is going to get under the door and how much is just going to splash into the door, that kind of thing. So they roll fairly well. And what happens is, and the goblins save, but they fail their save. So they light the thing and they hear screeching on the other side and they big bong, right? The cauldron hits and then more screaming because they had acid. And so the goblins panicked with the fire. They didn't take a lot of damage from fire. What they did do is drop the acid on themselves effectively. They dropped the cauldron splashes acid everywhere. Now they're sprayed. So these four get immediately taken out. Then the party busts in. Now there are more mooks here. I'm just going to take that guy. There's presumably the Exile up on this raised platform, and he is working some controls of these cauldrons here on the side, presumably. He's got some bodyguards here, and he's got a big dude, right? And he's not as big as a Minotaur, but he is the lieutenant effectively. So once they see the parties breach the door, the archers start to fire. The goblins make a line. The lieutenant drinks the berserk potion. He hulks out and grows to humongous size, right? And he's going to also fight. So you've got this line. You've got 10 PCs, right, or whatever. You got the 9 PC. What was it? It was actually 7. We were missing one. There you go. And Patrick. This fight was crazy good. It doesn't look like it's that, right? It doesn't look like it's all that. In that you had what? Only 4, 4, and 1. But effectively what happens is, this guy's dangerous. These guys move in. The party sort of ends up here-ish, I would say. And so you have this line of fighting. Now, mind you, don't get me wrong, there's also a burning acid pool, so there's actually two lines here. And so the party's here and here. And it's just chaos for a few rounds. Now, in the meantime, this guy, so the first thing is he is working the controls, and this cauldron starts to dump. And the party is, this combat's actually like here-ish. And someone's like, well, will that cauldron hit us? I'm like, well, yes, it's likely. The fight's actually back a little bit. So keep that in mind. I drew it a little too far to the right. It would be a lot closer to the lines being like this. Is that going to spill out? And yes, it's going to spill out here. And so the group is here. So whatever he's going to dump, he's going to dump it on the party. Lord Vincent, who's a master machinist, he, rushes over, quickly recognizes where to jam a dagger in the gear mechanism to seize this thing up. And so he sort of saves it. That was the first thing they had to react to. In the meantime, they're getting pelted by arrows too. So this fight's a little rough because they just keep getting pelted. There's a fight there. They certainly have the ground forces, but that big guy is also rough. And he's just wielding metal piping and slugging metal piping. That's the first thing. So the battle rages a round or two. The second thing is, then this alchemist, once his vats have been disabled, he starts throwing firebomb potions effectively. And that is a 1 hex radius, and people take 2d6 damage. Fire, I still give them their armor, but then they can ignite. And ignite's a status effect. Every round we roll a d6, you take that much penetrating fire damage. If I roll a 6, it goes up a die. If I roll a 1 or 2, it goes down a die. Or you can give up your whole turn and stop, drop, and roll, effectively. So he is hitting 3 people every round in the party with this, doing stupidly good damage because I'm rolling really high damage. And they're igniting, and so he does way more than he should. And so Lance is up here, and Patrick Falloran is up here, and Avery's up here. Like they're getting torched. In the meantime, the big guy is fighting Father Grimm. Father Grimm's standing off against the big guy, and it's a little bit of a standstill. But then a little guy comes up, smacks Father Grimm. Now we have a so if you take more than a quarter of your hit points in a single attack, that is a wound, and we roll on the wound table. However, if my attack roll is a 12, no matter how much damage I do, that is an auto wound, is what we call it. If you take damage at all from that attack, then that damage is wound damage. So you could take a 1 point of damage and that be something, that cracks a bone or something and causes you an impairment or whatever, or bleeding or whatnot. So this other goblin comes up while Father Grimm is engaged with the big guy, whacks him in the head, right? It gets inside the armor and he whacks him in the head. And it's an auto wound. And he does 11 points of damage anyway. So it's stupid good. Now, Father Grimm has armor, so he does, whatever. It's not a wound normally, but he takes enough to, and but he gets the auto wound. The auto wound is an 11. And so if you roll a 10, 11, or 12, that's shock damage. That shock damage is added to the wound. 2 dice shock damage. He rolls 11 points of shock damage too. Father Grimm is almost like he is great to not great all of a sudden because one shot got inside his head protection and harmed him. So he is stunned and impaired, and he's bleeding. Patrick Falloran's bleeding and ignited. Right, Lance is down to his last handful of hit points. Like, so it's this whole thing. This all go. And the party originally was going to go and take care of those archers, and that was going to be effectively Karen's job, the sister's job, but she never gets to it. She's right now too busy just sort of trying to help the party keep up with these goblins. And so, again, just a crazy fight. Grimm actually goes down. He bleeds out and goes down. So what happens when you reach 0 hit points? Is that you have to make a death save. Now, this isn't like a D&D death save where it's 50% if you make 3 or not make 3. When you reach a condition where you are going to die anyway, you have to make a death save against DL 8. So this is pretty easy. Difficulty level 8. You can pick any one of your stats. Your highest stat you get to pick again. So Father Grimm's is muscle 16. So 16-8. He's 8 up. It is almost impossible he will fail this, but he can. If he rolls a 1 or a 2 or whatever, right? I can roll super high. Done. He succeeds his death save, so he is simply knocked out. However, his death save forever goes up by 1. So now his new death save is 9. If he gets a death condition again, his death save will go up to 10, etc., until finally he fails and is killed. So what happens here actually is that the party makes gets some purchase on these guys. Oops, got a lot of random lines in there. So the party makes some purchase on this top flank and breaks through. Right? They kill some guys, whatever. They break through, and so the group then starts to bum rush up here. And this guy doesn't have much protection once his boys are KO'd. So yeah, Patrick, I think, on fire. Lance down to his last handful of hit points, and the monk Avery are charging the alchemist. And the alchemist has taken some damage from archer fire, by the way, because that's what, instead of shooting those guys, Karen has sort of tried to keep up with the damage of these guys. But she's also tried to shoot the alchemist, which she has done twice, and she has wounded him once. In the meantime, Father Grimm is down, and The wizard is now facing up against the big guy, trying to shock and grasp him and not get pulverized by the giant pipe that he's carrying. So that's not working out for him. Um, and he lucks out. He does not get killed. He should have got toasted. Like, just literally, this should not have been a fight where he was. But um, but he sort of manages to not get hang on to life and limb as he's trying to shock and grasp this guy. I don't know that he ever actually did any damage to him. I don't think he could get close enough with him swinging that pipe to actually get a decent hit in. So the group charges up. The goblin takes an invisibility potion, which he did before. That's how he. So the story that Sogtor told was that he challenged the chief of the goblin tribe, the Hillhounds, with Sogtor's tribe, and lost, and only escaped because he had he drank something, became invisible. Well, he drinks something, becomes invisible as the party gets to his platform. So they're doing the little oh shit, where is he kind of gig, and they see a hidden trap door open here. So they try. So right. So there's a bunch of rolls. They rush it and try what they can to get him. They do. So they start because they start to sweep to try to find him right with their swords and so on. And I think Lance actually hits him with the spear because Lance has reach, so he doesn't have to get to him. So when this trap door opens that they didn't see before, and they're all here, like Lance can get a shot, and he actually, as far as he knows, hits him. He feels the spear do, and there's a thud into this passageway, and they think they've gotten the Exile. The fight was great. It was a good fight, and I do need a way to catalog the fights a little better. I think what I might try to do for you guys is take some pictures of the fights as they go and post those so you can sort of see how the fights go on. I don't think I did this one justice. It was way down to the wire. Like the big guy he did some damage to some dudes, but not a lot. It was some of the random damage that was coming in. The archer fire did way more than than expected. The fire bombs, which only do 2d6, and then against armor, you take a couple points off that. If you're only taking 5 points of damage, who cares? But it ignited 2 of the party members, and they took damage. I think Lance was hurting. Patrick was hurting Falarin. Grim goes down. Like everybody took their fair share. It was a chunky, suspenseful fight. Like there was no time where everybody was like, "Oh, okay, well this has gotten dull." The alchemist takes his invisibility potion, and for a moment it looks like he gets away, but they do hit him, and ultimately he doesn't get away. Now I really should have made it uncertain, so I could have done the soap opera thing, and maybe rolled a die, right? Like maybe he falls into a chute, and they don't know where his body is. They don't find his body. Nonetheless, I sort of didn't do that. I didn't think about it until the shower the next morning. That's why once things end, you got to be careful. Don't let one of your parties slip in. Dan's like, "Well, I'm going to take this dude's head," and I'm like, "Okay." And I shouldn't have done that. I should have said, "Well, let's get to that next week," and then I could have sort of decided whether I want this guy to be like a recurring villain or not. Or even just sometimes what I'll do, even if I wanted to be a recurring villain, I'll give him a 4 in 12 chance of escape. Right? And then roll and go, he didn't find his body. Or now I definitely did that during supers, because supers, they're all recurring villains. Let's understand something. But I didn't necessarily think this guy was necessarily going to be a recurring villain. But at the end I thought, well, he could be sort of interesting. But I think they got him, right? So they got him and took his head. And then to some degree at that point, it was late. And so we didn't, like, they had indeed dropped, they did drop the big guy. They dropped a lot of these guys on the ground. They didn't really touch any of these dudes, but I just assumed that the answer was they're going to flee or they're going to get shot or whatever. because we don't need to deal with all of that. Once the alchemist was down and the big guy was down, the combat is effectively over. Um, but I was pretty jazzed with how that fight went. I think the wounds have settled. I think the damage ranges have all settled. So I think I'm happy with how a lot of this is now. So pretty good stuff. Um, so that's most of it. That's where we ended. I think the next time, of course, they will head to the headwaters, perform the ceremony, and sort of finish up. But we'll see where that takes us. They don't have 1,000 hours here though. They don't have a ton of time here. It's not like there are no goblins left. There's still 70, 80, 60. There's some number of goblins in this compound that are gonna not love the fact that PCs are here. Now they need to do something to this place too, and that's going to cause a little bit of ruckus also. So we'll see what happens. They don't have an infinite amount of time to be here. So I think next time they might want to look around. They want to find, right, if there's anything valuable or anything like that. Keeping in mind, like they're going to run out of this place at some point. So they need to be able to make a move quickly when they need to move. Sogtor's not going to last forever. He made the initial roll really well, failed the next two, and I effectively told them, well, I think that either he's losing men or that the goblins are becoming wise to his what's going on. And if we fail again, then the jig is up. So they know they need to move. There's a little bit of a time element here. So they're not going to have half an hour to search this place. They might have 10 minutes or something like that. So I think that's where we're going to end this talk. Thank you very much again for, indulging me. It's fun to tell these stories again. It sort of helps me recap. Gets me thinking about how the game went and what we need to do in the future, which is fun also and helpful for me GMing. I think this is how I want the big fights to go. I want, that razor edge of, and again, I don't know, Grim could have died like that. There was no, the death saves are obviously stilted for the players, 100%. Like, I don't want people to die. But I want the possibility to be there if they're fighting. Like, I don't see that's not, 100%. So it was good, and I had a really great time, and I think everybody else did too. So next, though, comes the sophomore curse. The first adventure is easy. It's the second adventure that's hard. So we're going to have to figure that one out here in short order because we're playing on Saturday again. So we will see where that goes, and I will talk to you all later. So thank you very much. If you have questions or comments, please fire me a message. And other than that, I will see you tomorrow night for Dragon's Dogma. Not Dragon's Dogma, for Dragon's Down. I think we're going to play some bingo. So talk to you later.